what we have seen with the inequalities around access to COVID vaccines, which are really extreme. In my continent, Africa, I haven't checked in the last few weeks, but less than 10% of people have been vaccinated for COVID-19. But those inequalities which have been manifest again are really symptomatic of a broader inequality in access to healthcare services that has existed for many, many decades, but which was compounded and, if you like, entrenched in 1985 with the WTO TRIPS agreement, the agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property, which was really an agreement heavily influenced by big pharma and by big pharmaceutical companies, which was meant to cut off the possibility, which was meant to strengthen intellectual property and limit the room for maneuver of developing countries, and particularly countries like India, to produce their own medicines to meet the needs of poor populations in developing countries.
So the TRIPS waiver proposal was seeking a time-limited suspension of intellectual property rights. Now, all kinds of intellectual property rights, and this is a really important point, to do with the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 related related to COVID-19. The term that was used in the original proposal is all health technologies. Now, the fact that it's time limited is important. The fact that it speaks about a suspension of rights is important. It's also important for us to understand that it's not just patents that are involved. An important element of this debate that really complicates the way we talk about it is trade secrets. Now, whether that will have any extraterritorial implications will depend on the terms on which they suspend the TRIPS related rules in their jurisdiction. Now, even if a waiver passes through, there is no obligation on many Western governments, or any Western governments, in fact, to actually implement the waiver. What we will end up with, in all likelihood, is a widespread of different kind of measures. And a lot of academics, a lot of scholars on IP see this as deviance. Deviance that further complicates the complexity of intellectual property arrangements transnationally. Now, for many advocates in the global South, this deviance is exactly what we need, because it gives margin, room for maneuver for different kinds of initiatives to flow from the TRIPS waiver.
India was a key player in the fight against AIDS, in ensuring that the flexibilities could be used. Supplier company I worked for was quite vocal, was heard, and moved governments, including the President of the United States. So, I'm not saying Cipla is the only one, but a group of activists with help from pharmaceutical companies made it happen. We're failing to see that in this stage, and we must ask why. Why is it that Indian companies who could have made the drugs, we can make remdesivir, we can make molnupiravir, we can make all of these drugs very easily, we can make the vaccines. Why are these companies not at the forefront of the battle like they were during AIDS? And the answer to that, in my view, is that they've all been co-opted by big pharma. So no one's willing to actually go out and seek a compulsory license anymore. Amongst the top 20 Indian companies, how many will go and seek a compulsory license? So one of the arguments of the Indian government is, if you ask, we will grant you. But there isn't enough signaling from the government for someone to invest in R&D to do all of this and be sure that they will get a license. So that's why I said it's a bit of shenanigans here in India with saying, if you come to us, we'll grant you a compulsory license, but we were never granted one before, and we've rejected all the applications for the last 20 years. So Indian pharma, even if there are the next group of Indian companies which want to enter this and want to be the new age Ciplas, are just dissuaded by government from doing any of this. So there is that issue, which I think is really, really important.